Hello, everyone, and welcome to this BIA webinar, which is about the JP Morgan and Global Biotech conferences for 2025. I'm joined for this excellent pre-Christmas event by two experts in the field, Lynn Bateson, the Chief Executive of BioPartner UK, and Olivia Kavlan, who's the Chief Corporate Development and Strategy Officer at Alchemab Therapeutics, but also has had the pleasure of being doing business development at many of these events down the year. So thank you both for joining. And I think the next slide, which Chloe will show, shows us there without our headphones on, me without a tie on rather than me with a tie on, and Lynn with books rather than the paraphernalia of what we put at showing conferences behind you. So you're very welcome. This is quite an informal webinar. We're very keen to get your questions, your insights, your comments. I know that we'll have people online who've been to many of these events before, and sometimes you may be a first timer. So no question is a stupid question. I'm going to take it from a position of people who may never have been to JP Morgan, but I know that we have hardened professionals who've been there every year for a decade as well, who are likely to join us. So we're going to have a mixed class today. Keen to get your insights and your thoughts. So do please use the chat function, use the questions function, and we'll endeavour to answer your questions as we go along and make this convivial. So I hope what we're going to talk about today, next slide, Chloe, is the JPM week, JP Morgan week 2025, a little bit of what's on, what you can use as resources to help your planning if you're thinking of going. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the key UK networking event to which you are all invited. But I'm also going to put this in the context, and this is a discussion I've been having with BIA members. How do you think about which business development events do you go to? What else is out there? And how do we think about that for companies at different sizes and different scales of development? What's really worth it? Where can you get the most impact? And depending on who you've got relationships with, where is a good place to start? And of course, new for this year was London Life Science Week 2024, nucleated around the Jefferies conference in November this year. I think that that's really growing as an event, as an opportunity, particularly for UK-based companies. So if you're thinking that you're planning through for next year, I think we should talk about where that fits into your thinking. So I'll start with a few thoughts about JP Morgan Week. Chloe, next slide. So what is it? So people talk about, are you going to JPM? What is it? What is it? And people think of it as being a conference. And yes, there certainly is a conference with company presentations. In fact, there's a couple, JP Morgan being one. It's an invite-only conference at a key hotel on Union Square in San Francisco. But actually, JP Morgan Week is a lot more than that. What it really is the global life science investment community, pharma BD and leaders in biotech all going to one city at one time. And I break it down into 5 types of things that are going on that week. The main thing, I think, where people get the most value is if you've got a diary and you're meeting investors that you already know, you'll probably be invited to private hotel suites for those meetings to talk about your business or to get them on the roster with those people. That can either be for pharmaceutical companies who are looking to purchase companies or actually leading investors in life sciences. So most of the action is invisible if you just turn up. It's private meetings between companies and investors in hotel suites that are unmarked around town. The second thing that's going on is partnering meetings. If you've ever been to a big business development meeting in life sciences, you'll know that there's rabbit hutch booths, usually made out of grey carpet, where you organise partnering meetings and meet a series of people who can help you with your business through a partnering system. Those are happening in JP Morgan Week at conferences like Biotech Showcase. There's also spaces organised by US partner organisation BIO and others. There's then a lot of networking, the way that we'd know and love from many types of events that we would organise in the BIA, breakfast and evening events. We'll talk more about how to find those and what they are as we go through. And then I've always found that being in San Francisco with the intensity of people who are out there, that you can bump into people and make useful connections. Really, from the moment I've arrived at Heathrow, I made a very formative relationship in a Starbucks on a corner of a street, and actually I bump into many people walking the street in JP Morgan Week. So that's also an important aspect of the week. And I've talked about the fact that this conference is there, but I thought I'd put it that way round because it shows that there's a wide variety of things. I don't know, Lynn or Olivia, if you have views on JP Morgan Week. Olivia, you've been many times. have I missed anything, or would you put this in a different order for you?
No, I think you've hit it exactly. I have to say, I've been to JP Morgan Week many, many years now, but I've never properly been to the Biotech Showcase. So I think you can lean in on any of these points and pretty much ignore some of the others. It's really you need to tailor it for what works for you.
Yeah, and then do you think this has changed down the years?
It's an exciting week, it really is, and it's quite daunting if you haven't been before, especially if you haven't got those private meetings or you haven't got a base or a group of people to go with. I think it's really important to make the connections before you go and to keep them going while you're there. Not because something's going to go wrong, but just for reassurance that you are going to bump into people, as you've said, Steve. And Biotech Showcase is a really good base. It does cost some money to attend, but there are one-to-one meetings. There's a nice lunch. There's plenty of space for you to sit and work on your laptop if you need to. And there are, lots of satellite events going on during the week. So, don't overplan. Do try to focus in on what you're going to find is most useful to your schedule.
Cool. Okay. Well, let's go on. Next slide, I hope put some of this in context. Yeah, I'm always amazed at how it dominates the city in a way that I've never seen other conferences in Europe do. This is just a picture of the cable car that goes downtown, and it's got adverts for biotech companies on it. And this is the sign for the formal JP Morgan conference next year, 43rd year. Obviously, it's been running for many years. I think one thing that we might see that's different this year, I don't know, but I'm imagining that security may well be stepped up, and I think I'm just anticipating really the experience that we saw in New York last week. I imagine that there may well be changes in JP Morgan week, perhaps rightly, but I don't know what that will mean. But I think it will be different to previous years. Nothing formal yet on that, but I would expect to see higher levels of security, and I don't know what that will look like. Maybe if I could just go to what we are aware of in terms of conferences that are in town that week. Next slide. Obviously, the Westin St Francis Hotel on Union Square is where the JP Morgan conference is. If you've been invited, you've been invited. If you haven't, you're probably not going to get a ticket. Biotech Showcase is round the corner at the Hilton San Francisco, and as Lynn says, that's a good base for folk who've not got JP Morgan tickets, although it does cost money to go to. Wuxi is the big Chinese firm. They run a global forum also in the Hilton San Francisco Union Square, which people have found useful. And Resi is another one that you might be aware of that's around the corner, as is Endpoints, the trade magazine running their event. So you can see that there's lots of things in a few blocks, and that's sort of the sum up of the layout that we see. I mean, Olivia, you said you hadn't been to Biotech Showcase. Have you been to? I've been to all of these. To say, have you been to any of these?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say that Wuxi Forum is really great because you don't have to pay for it. And it's enormous, and it kind of goes on. I think it's all of Tuesday afternoon this year, and you can just park yourself somewhere, generally where it's not raining. And actually, there are some really interesting talks going on as a part of that. So, if you've got any vague connection to Wuxi, they will easily send you an invite. So just reach out and get one of those. Endpoints I've also found is quite helpful. They often have some really good breakfast conversations, and that's where, as you were saying, Steve, at the beginning, just serendipity, meeting people. That's where I've met people that generally I wouldn't bump into in some of the other places. So those would be my two top picks on this list.
Cool. So the next slide is an innovation for this year. Bio and Novita have set up quite a good app which gives a good guide to the satellite networking events taking place during JPM weeks. I checked this out last week. You can see that it really is pretty effective. It shows all of the events. You can get your own event included if you go to this website. You can scan the QR code to download it. If you look for Guide to JPM 25 on any of the app stores or Google Play, you can get it, and it's pretty robust. It's not beautiful, but it's the best thing that I'm aware of for what's going on, and it shows the around 100 events that are in the margins. In the old days, there used to be a PR company who organised one of these. They've retired, so this has taken over new for this year, and it's not bad, and it's run by our colleagues, the trade association in the US, BIO. So I'm not going to go through it in great detail, but it's not bad. Have a look. It tells you how to find those things. Often they say that you need to pre-register. Sometimes they're very harsh on the door. Sometimes they're much looser. I've found both to be the case. Sometimes it's easy to get in. Sometimes if you're with a friend who's got a ticket, you can get in. Sometimes it's impossible to get in. And of course, they're all competing with each other. But this is the best way to understand what's going on. And I would reach out to the organisers in advance if you are hoping to get in. Lynn or Olivia, have you had got views on what's around in the evenings or receptions that are important to focus on?
I would say that the key for us as a biotech is actually at the moment we focus on JPM for our pharma meetings. I would say that everyone has different reasons for going to JPM. For us investors, we can generally pick up most places. There are investors there, so if they're there and they happen to be West Coast based investors, it might be worth meeting them. But really for us, the most important thing is to try and get those pharma meetings in, and it's quality, not quantity. So some people might come up to you and say they've got 25 or 30 meetings. Well, to be honest, it doesn't really matter as long as you've got the quality ones. Now, when you don't get the meetings, this is mostly said and done by now. So, most folk have the meetings, the key meetings that they're going to have in your diaries. Then there's a lot of planning around trying to get the most out of those meetings. So the first thing is, do you have what content are you going to take to that meeting? Do you need to get a CDA in place? Who are the folk that are going to be there on the pharma side at that meeting? Can you increase the seniority of those people, because that's going to be your ticket to getting a deal done later in the year. And if all of that fails and you don't get a meeting with the pharma company because whatever you're doing is not within their strategy this year, fall back and ask for an invite to the reception. And all of them have receptions going on most of the week, and they are pretty fast and loose on handing out, reception invites. But you do need to have a reception invite before you get there. So I would, go back to them, hustle, try and get that in there, and that can be added to your list of things to do in the evenings. And reception hopping is no bad thing. So, if you've got 2 or 3 receptions that night, go for it. Relive your fresher week.
Yes, no, I certainly think it can be a long day because California starts early and then this tends to run through not desperately late. I don't think you're running much beyond 9 o'clock, but they can be fairly long days, particularly if you're on a European time schedule when you arrive. It can sort of be, it's a 4 a.m. job for us, isn't it? By the time we've got there.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point that Olivia made about hustling as well, because we've had various conversations about partnering systems and when is it okay to let go of a request that you've made perhaps on somebody's system and not got a response from an investor. And the consensus seems to be that it's not impolite to remind them, and you certainly should be prepared for them to respond to you quite close to the event, because they tend not to look very, very early. So yeah, don't hassle them, but do give them a couple of reminders. And that's a really good pointer to say, give me an invitation to the receptions that I bump into you.
So thank you. We're going to move on to a little bit that's sort of UK focused in that week. So the next slide shows that the Department for Business and Trade are keen to put together a lookbook where they are going to sort of promote companies that tell them that they are coming into town. If you want to be included in their communication, which they will then share with their network. This is the Department of Business and Trade had people based on the West Coast and in the US who are keen to promote the opportunity of life science companies. They are putting that book together as we speak, and will use that as their introduction to people that you may not know, we may not know. Do please complete their survey, tell them about what you're trying to do, and they can then use their expertise and their network to get you a meeting that perhaps you didn't know that can get you into some things. So we're keen to partner with DBT on this. do the survey if you're going, and they may be able to provide contacts and connections through their networks that we're not able to do. So do please consider doing that. Lynn, I don't know whether you've got experience of anybody who's made some connections to that, and Olivia, I don't know whether it's something that Alcabab have used or what you've probably got established connections already.
Well, in addition to the lookbook, we'll be doing our UK directory of companies attending Biotech Showcase, and we try to add in anybody else that wants to be included. So if you want to look at that later on this week when it goes live on our website, then you can get in touch with us to make contact with people when you're going over there. I'd like to also point out that during that week, there are 2 SACS Forum events. SACS
You're right.
Really good for meeting investors. The inaugural Obesity Innovation Forum takes place on the 11th, and the Neuroscience, which is a regular thing, on the 12th. Again, there's a cost to that, but you can save 10% through registering through us. And we also have dirt cheap tickets for Biotech Showcase, last 2 remaining if you want to get in touch.
Excellent stuff. Great point, Lynn. So this is the lookbook, and the next other thing that's happening, which I'm sure is one of the reasons why you're all on the call, is the UK reception. So if you're on this, if you've registered with this webinar, then you will be, and you're traveling to San Francisco, you will be invited to this, and the format follows the same as previous years. It will be at the Marines Memorial Club, which is on the corner just beyond the Western St. Francis at JP Morgan, so a block and a half away, just up on Sutter Street. It's an easy walk from either Biotech Showcase or JP Morgan. Monday evening, 6 till 8. Obviously, a good show of Brits turn up for that one, and we will make sure that we've got everybody else coming. We're partnering with the UK government to make sure that there's a good and there'll be a strong representation from what I call UK state-based entities, whether that be the British Business Bank, the Office for Life Science, and others. That list is still being put together. MHRA have been in the past, people like that, as well as companies. So if you're keen to engage, or you think there are people that want to engage with the UK ecosystem who you're aware of, we are keen to host, and that's where it will be. Marines Memorial Club, Monday, 13th of Jan. 6 till 8 p.m. Olivia, we have it on your list of the many things to do.
Yep, absolutely. It's already there.
Cool. And yeah, we get a good crowd.
Monday
don't we?
is quite busy though.
It is. I'm well used to people popping in and out. It is within the walking circuit, isn't it? Of the of the things. That's part of the reason why it is where it is. Yeah, and we pick up quite a lot of people who are interested in Britain, or Brits who are based in the US, as well as people who've travelled. So do come along.
I think there is a Takeda reception and a Lilly reception that evening, and I'm sure there are more as well. So for those on the line, if you need those, just be aware there are lots going on in the evenings as well.
Cool. Okay, so I mean, one of the things that people increasingly talk to me about is it worth it? And if you look at the next slide here. This is, we took a snapshot. We thought, actually, the hotel prices are pretty pricey in San Francisco. Even at 3-star level, the cost of flights is pretty big. I know some people have it in their diaries and have organised it sort of 9 months in advance, and have got good prices. But it is a significant outlay. And what's interesting, the discussion that I'm hearing is that there is now more of a, is it worth it for us, and how many people will we send, rather than we must be there. So I think the fear of missing out is going down on having to be there, but I think it is still of value to people, particularly where they have got meetings organised in advance. I don't know, Olivia, when you're chatting to colleagues, whether you think it's where it sits compared to where it used to a few years ago, JP Morgan Week.
Yeah, so for us, it's our lifeblood. Like, this is our lifeblood of doing deals. And, I think London Life Sciences Week is fabulous and it will have a really important role, but it's not going to supplant the ability to meet the scientific leads of big pharma companies. So, JPM is where essentially you get to meet, the heads of, for us, it's kind of neuro. You've got the kind of, senior fellows of neuro. You get with the transaction leads and the search and evaluate leads all in one room, all at one time. And this is where pharma companies set their ideas around deals for the rest of the year. So this is for us at least, this is a unique opportunity to meet, all sorts of different pharma companies and be put on their agenda. And, as a result of this, over a few years running, we have been put on agendas and we've been, identified and been told that we're on a list to do a deal with, type thing. So it is essential. And being in biotech, financing and deals are core to what we do. So from a pharma BD perspective, I think this is incredibly important. Now, having said that, it's not worth going if you don't have any decent meetings set up. So that process starts, and as I'm sure many folk been on here have done this many times before, but that process really starts back in kind of October or even earlier about which companies they're going to meet at JPM, because they only have a certain number of slots. And those slots can get booked up really early. So even by mid-November, we were hearing from a couple of pharma companies that their slots were booked, and they weren't, whether that was true or not, I don't know. Maybe they just didn't want to see us, but, and really it's now that our calendars are starting to fill out. So from a value perspective, you have to be really thoughtful about who you bring, what you bring. It needs to be quality and who you're meeting. But if that all lines up together, then it's definitely worth it. And I would say on some of these costs, it is worth, it is worth doing that thing 9 months before. I mean, I know that folk don't even know if they're going to have cash in 9 months' time, but, I think you have to think on the positive side in biotech and say, yes, we will have cash. Come hell or high water, we'll find a way of having cash, and we're going to go to JPM. And, if you book back in April, which is what we've done sometimes, you can get really decent, cost of flights. We often fly United and not British Airways anymore because they are very expensive. And then you can book, you don't need to book centrally in town. I'm sure you've probably all booked your places already, but we are out, we're often out around the wharf area, which is much less expensive and actually I think much more pleasant from a kind of community perspective as well. So I think this is indispensable. I would say what's changed is that, we used to go out to meet investors here. We don't do that so much anymore because there are so many other meetings through the year, like bioequity and other opportunities to meet investors. And also they're much more responsive than a head of R&D in a pharma company. You can kind of pick them up through your current investors. So we tend to use other forums like the London Life Sciences Forum for more of those types of interactions. So it has evolved, at least in our eyes, but it is still a pivotal cornerstone in our annual calendar.
Thanks. Lynn, how do you see it? We're thinking of the long term. You've been in this game a while.
Thanks for that. I know you've got high hopes for London Life Science Week, and so have I. I think it's going to be really, really building over the next few years, and this is where we're going to see the evolution. We haven't quite seen it yet. And again, interesting that Olivia says it's not going to supplant JPM because that is a cornerstone event for you. I feel this year there are less UK companies going out. I could be wrong, but we've had less interest. And it could be that evolution is going to be along the lines of BIA Europe and BIA Europe Spring, where some companies will choose one or the other, and it will depend on how successful they've been at one as to whether they go to the next one or not. And the flavour can be slightly different, but lots of companies do both. And we might still see that people are doing JP Morgan and Bio and London Life Science Week. I do hope so. I hope everybody's successful enough to be able to afford it. But it is expensive to go out to the States for JPM and Bio. and get those hotel deals and things going early, as you said, if you can.
Cool. Well, thank you. Let's I'm interested in people's views. If people have got views they want to put in the chat, please do. Please tell me what you think. Have I got it right? Have I got it wrong? I'm going to move on to some basic JPM takeaways, and then we'll move on to talk about some of the other opportunities through the year. As I say, we're talking to a fairly broad crew here, so got to talk to people who've been many times, and also people who are perhaps even starting companies and thinking about where's the right place to go. So next slide, please. We've talked about this, making sure you get your planning in advance. I'd say, yeah, this people are fixed by Christmas would be my sense. Although oddly, if you've not booked a hotel room, it might be that they discount really right up to the last day because they get returns. So we're in that situation. Make sure you know what you want. Use the social evenings, and that app can help you get there. Phone charger is always the thing. I think we've talked about this. You don't have to have a ticket to JP Morgan to have a successful week. Most of the bit work is done outside of JP Morgan. Most of the people in town will not have a ticket to JP Morgan. And I always say, I do put this in, it can be rough in downtown San Francisco and at night. So it is not like there is a significant challenges. I've saw several examples of street violence the last time I was there. So I'm just, a few blocks the wrong way can make a big difference in a way that perhaps if you're used to London or Oxford, it's a different feel in downtown San Francisco. Although Uber is available and most people utilize themselves of that. But yeah, just take care. But if we're not going to JPM, or we're thinking about or planning JPM and we're doing that, what else could I do? Let's have a look at some other thoughts, and maybe Lynn and Olivia, you can help me with this. We've already started to touch on this. And if you can look at the next slide, I know I've just put up on the next slide again, a few, I mean, the challenge that we've got is there's thousands of conferences and each company will have their own preference to these. But we were trying to think about where you might meet investors or develop your business, and some of the ones that we're probably closer to. I think, Olivia, you mentioned bioequity. We've put it up there. We're obviously taking a gang to advanced therapies in Dallas at the end of January. There are specific missions run by the UK government. One we're supporting is a deep engineering biology trade mission to Japan in February. The big conference run by BIO is in Boston next year. And that will be a big shebang, 20,000 people, massive partnering conference there. And I've put up here the dates of the Bio Europe's spring and autumn, Milan in Milan in March, and the bigger one in Vienna in November, at the end of the beginning of November. Symbiote is one that we've taken a few companies to. We'll look to do that again in May. So again, that's going back to California. And then I've put on here London Life Science Week 2025. Many more conferences are available. But I was just thinking, if people are thinking their way through 25 and they've either got JP Morgan as a centerpiece or they're thinking about where they could go to. I don't know if you have views and thoughts, Olivia, ones of these that you've been to or not been to, or ones that you would also mention to highlights to others.
Yeah, so often coming out of JPM, there's enormous amounts of positivity. And, invariably every year you come out thinking, yeah, we're going to get this deal done with so-and-so because they were so positive about it. And you go back and you tell your investors and nothing comes of it. So we have found actually Bio Europe Spring to be quite a useful touch point after JPM, just to actually really understand where you sit with some of these pharma companies. I would say it's not absolutely essential, but it's a helpful, and generally pharma companies partnering targets are set on a calendar annual year basis. So trying to make sure you keep up that touch points with them beginning of the year is helpful. The next one, bioequity, I think actually is really becoming a really good conference for investors, obviously, and you always need cash, so it's always a good one to go to if you can get to. Bio in the middle of the year is actually really good. I think that would be number two. Number two after kind of JPM for us, because that's where you can start to get kind of technical about things if you've discussed them at JPM. Typically, we have found, at least, maybe others have this different, that you don't have the science folk there. This is more attended by the external innovation and transaction leads from Big Pharma and search and evaluate leads. So, but it's really big, and again, it has this little bit of the JPM type vibe around it. So you can really start to understand where you are with partners there. There's often then a bit of a lull, clearly, through the summer period, and then BIA Europe in the autumn, at least for us, has been a really essential point to start to get folk that you've been less engaged with excited about JPM. So we kind of we look at our, who are the pharma companies that we're most engaged with, who's the kind of second tier, and BIA Europe is a really, actually quite almost a little bit late, but it's really important if you want to get on the agendas of folk who are in that second tier and get a meeting at JPM. And then I think the London Life Sciences Week edition at the back end is brilliant, because then you start to kind of get a bit closer to your investors, understand what they want. Again, we saw quite a few pharma companies there, not quite as many as you would have at JPM, but slightly more investor, but starting to round out and get a feel of what's hot in the industry, which can help you as you start to think about the next year.
Thanks, Olivia. Really helpful. Lynn, how do you see the year?
Well, I'd like to mention those geographical conferences as well. If you're particularly interested in Japan, for example, then MedCity do a delegation out to Japan in October. We've got Bio Spain taking place every 2 years, which is now going to be in Barcelona for the foreseeable future. At the beginning of October, which also coincides with Nordic Life Science Days, which rotates amongst the Scandinavian countries. Lots of those, sort of maybe 350 to 1,000 attendees, much more manageable in terms of getting to see the people that you want to see. But a bit more generalist in terms of business development rather than scientific or investor.
Yeah, thank you. No, I agree. I mean, it's there's a vibrant scene here. I'm just trying to help UK companies as they go on their journey. And I suppose, from my perspective, is if you're in Europe, then the globals that are supposed to be doing deals with Europe tend to come to the European conferences, and that's why I put these ones out there. And they can, I think, be useful stepping stones to other connections. And I think that London Life Science Week, my sense is that there's a lot of Americans through, and the European mainland Europeans also coming through for that week, because it's nucleated around the Jefferies banking conference. It's got that, but it's also starting to get those hotel room meetings happening and a vibrant scene. I just think for people who are planning budgets for next year, it's one to have in the diary. Week commencing the 16th of November. I should have put that on this slide. Thanks, Angela, for adding, is when it's going to be next week, and it's worth thinking about having that in your diary alongside all of these other things, which I think, Olivia, you've given a good sense of where they fit. Obviously, each company has got to make their own route through this, but I hope this is a useful guide. And as companies are at different stages of maturity, you may be making your initial connections with either pharma companies for partnerships or with investors. These are all useful, and then depending on the specifics of the disease or the therapy area that you're in, or the type of technology you've got, then obviously there's a whole host of more specialist events, which I don't think we can keep tabs on, but these are some of the ones that we found BIA members have found useful and have engaged with. So thank you for that. I'm just going to do one plug. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Lynn, your slide is next.
Thanks, Steve. Going back to your the app, which is has been launched by the Bio convention organisers. You don't have to download the app, by the way. Just go to the Bio website, and it's also bpjw.bio.org, and you can then access the partnering, which costs $1,200. At the Marriott, they've got lots of tables, lots of availability for you to pre-book meetings. We find with Bio convention that we don't sell any kind of walk-in tickets. It's always about the full access with one-to-one partnering that's important to people. And that's why I recommend Resi and Biotech Showcase and the others at JPM, because you've got your pre-scheduled meetings. It's really reassuring to know that you've got some meetings to look forward to rather than just walking around. And to that end, we've got Anglo-Nordic Life Science Conference taking place in London on the 3rd of April. That's got one-to-one partnering, very R&D to investor focused, taking place the same week, in fact, the day after BioTrinity, which is another very well-established UK event organised by OBN. And you'll see from the slide that we do UK delegations to BIA Europe and BIA Europe Spring. We just go along and fly the flag. You can see from my background the kind of efforts we make to say, come and look at the UK expertise that's here at this event, and give the UK companies a base so they can come and recharge their devices and get a little bit of moral support from each other. And that's really important. And at the bottom of the slide, you can see that the BIA and other delegations are also available. There's lots of outreach from the UK going on now, which I think is again part of that evolution in terms of industrial biotech and Symbiobeta and other specialities. So go to our website if you're not sure, if you're looking to plan for 2025. We've got quite a comprehensive list that we're adding to all of the time, and we can signpost you to discounts and support in delegations.
Thanks, Lynn. Yeah, I mean, my sense is we tried to focus today on things that involve travel or significant travel for UK companies as they plan the year. We should probably do another one which does all of the things that are going on within the UK. And I think in terms of the UK, I'm going to talk on the next slide, please, about the development of London Life Science Week. I think that week, 16th of November in the UK, we're starting to see critical mass of ex-UK people coming through London around this time. And I think it's probably to the benefit of the sector that critical mass exists. I'm conscious that there are many fabulous events throughout the year which we are involved in, but this feels like where the market has made a decision, and we see lots of this on lots of global people's agendas. So I think it's in the interest of the sector if we jump up and down about this. I've put in here pictures of some events that we organised and many events that were organised by other people. We'll make sure that there is a website which provides, in a similar way to the Bio one, to JP Morgan Week, what's going on in London Life Science Week. And if you're interested in that, please tell us if you're doing an event, and we'll keep people informed. As I say, I think there's a healthy market in events that people can get together, and people need to pick their own way through. But I think this has really mushroomed in the past few years, and it's certainly one that we'll have central in our diary, and I hope people on this call will both put in their diaries and promote as you're around and about at many of these other things going on through the year. Unless there's other thoughts, the final point from me, unless we've got questions, I'm having a look. We don't seem to have tons of questions or chat. So next slide, please. I hope you found this useful. In terms of BIA events, this is what's coming up on our agenda early in 25. Gala dinner on Thursday, the 30th of January, the last Thursday in January, as it's been for over 30 years, is our gala dinner at the Roundhouse in Camden. Looking forward to seeing 750 of you there for that. A couple of individual tickets are available if people want to come to that. Women in Biotech in Cambridge is fantastic and a great event. Programme for up-and-coming life science entrepreneurs in March is a great programme for early-stage entrepreneurs. Linked to the Startup Festival in May, and our Leadership Summit in Hertfordshire is in 23rd of June. Set your diaries for 9th of July, our fabulous summer party when the community gets together. So some bits from us which don't involve overnight stays or potentially very long trips in the UK ecosystem. With that, I'm going to do one more slide, which is, if you don't already do this, please sign up to stay in touch with us for newscast. Next slide, please. I tend to make sure that weekly we tell people what's going on, both in terms of in the sector, in terms of our influence and lobbying work with UK stakeholders, but also what's going on in the scene and what's going on and around and about. You can sign up at Newscast and hear from the musings of the BIA each week if you don't already do so. So with that, there will be a Women in Biotech event in London next year, as well as one in Cambridge, probably second half of the year, events scheduled throughout the year. But I'm flogging the one in Cambridge to begin with, because it was a great get together and went down very well. And I think we're back in the Sanger again for next year. So with that, I'm going to provide final comments to Lynn and Olivia. And thank you all for coming. Olivia, final comment, or Lynn, final comment?
I would say for JPM, remember to download the Uber and Lyft apps. That was my top tip.
That would be, yeah, my top tip too, and wear sensible shoes. The mistake I made the first time I went to San Francisco for JPM was believing that I could walk from one venue to another, not realizing how steep those hills are. And I did have very sore feet at the end of it. So yeah, get your Uber app.
And
Yes,
an umbrella.
Stuart says bring an umbrella. He's entirely right. It was it's the first place I went to where I got one of those emergency things on the phone, because it was so rainy that it was that they put a storm warning out. So yeah, it can be inclement weather at the beginning of January. It can be good fun, and great business can be done both at JP Morgan and tell us if you're going. Look forward to seeing you at the reception if you are going. If you're not going, I hope this has been useful to put it in some context. And thank you, Lynn, and thank you, Olivia, for sharing your expertise. I know that members appreciate it. Have a good trip. And for those of you who are taking a break, enjoy the festive season.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.